Welcome to the DIY Honda Garage channel. DTC P0463 refers to the problem that the fuel level sensor circuit is registering high voltage. The fuel level sensor, also known as the fuel gauge sending unit, is responsible for providing the vehicle's fuel gauge control module with the current fuel level in the tank. This sensor is typically located within the fuel tank, connected through a 4.4P connector, which plays a crucial role in accurately reflecting the amount of fuel present. When the sensor malfunctions, or if there is a wiring issue, the control module receives a false high voltage signal, leading to this error code. Before addressing the issue, it is essential to collect all freeze frame data, which contains vital information about vehicle conditions at the time the code was set, serving as a reference for troubleshooting. The use of Honda Diagnostic System, HDS, is also needed for proper troubleshooting, as it can clear the DTC and check for any additional codes that may indicate related issues. DTC P0463 involves the fuel level sensor, also referred to as the fuel gauge sending unit, which feeds data about the fuel level to the fuel gauge control module. The fuel level sensor is found within the fuel tank, typically mounted on the fuel pump assembly, making it essential for accurate fuel level monitoring. The fuel gauge control module, often integrated into the instrument cluster, interprets the data from the sensor and indicates the fuel level to the driver. Returning to the fuel tank, the fuel gauge sending unit utilizes a float that moves with the fuel level, altering the circuit resistance and subsequently sending an electrical signal that corresponds to the fuel amount. If this unit malfunctions, or if there's a wiring issue, the control module could interpret a high voltage situation, leading to the triggering of DTC P0463. Thus, both components must be fully functional for the system to relay accurate fuel levels. Several causes could result in the triggering of DTC P0463. A faulty fuel gauge sending unit is a primary concern. If the sensor itself is malfunctioning, it may provide incorrect resistance readings, which translates to erroneous voltage signals delivered to the gauge control module. Another potential cause is an open circuit in the wiring, which could occur between the fuel gauge sending unit and the gauge control module. Wiring issues like fraying or breaks are particularly problematic, as they alter the expected electrical signals. Furthermore, damaged connectors can lead to intermittent or poor electrical connections, leading to erroneous voltage readings. Each of these elements plays a crucial role in the functionality of the fuel gauge system. Diagnosing them thoroughly will assist in resolving DTC P0463. The symptoms of DTC P0463 primarily revolve around the fuel gauge's functionality. One noticeable symptom is inaccurate fuel gauge readings. The driver may find that the gauge either does not reflect the actual fuel level or jumps erratically. This inconsistency can lead to fuel being depleted without warning, potentially leaving the driver stranded due to lower than expected fuel levels. Another symptom could involve intermittent fuel level indications. The gauge may occasionally work correctly, but often reverts to incorrect readings. Additionally, the fuel warning light may misbehave, either triggering when fuel is sufficient or failing to indicate when the tank is nearing empty. These symptoms can severely impair the driving experience and compromise vehicle reliability, making early diagnosis and repair crucial. In troubleshooting step 1, the focus is to confirm the presence of DTC P0463. Start by turning the ignition switch to the on position, noted as on 2, without starting the engine. This enables the onboard diagnostic system to be fully powered while the necessary tests are conducted. Using the Honda Diagnostic System, HDS, Clear the existing DTCs. This will reset the error codes and allow the system to re-evaluate the current state of the components involved. After clearing the code, it is essential to wait for about 5 seconds to ensure the system has enough time to refresh and reset. Subsequently, check for any pending or confirmed DTCs with the HDS. If DTC P0463 appears again, it indicates a persistent failure that must be directly addressed. Otherwise, if the code does not return, it suggests an intermittent issue, prompting a need to inspect for poor connections or loose terminals in the gauge control module and the fuel gauge sending unit for future maintenance. Step 2 aims to determine whether the issue lies within the fuel gauge plus line or the fuel gauge minus line wiring. First, turn the ignition to the lock position to ensure safety while working on the vehicle. Access to the fuel tank unit requires removing an access panel located on the vehicle's floor. This provides necessary clearance to safely reach the underlying components. After this panel is removed, disconnect the fuel tank unit's 4P connector, which houses the electrical connections from the sensor to the gauge control module. With the connector disconnected, the next action is to turn the ignition switch back to on to power up the electrical system. Using a multimeter, measure the voltage across the specified test points, which are positioned on the fuel tank unit 4P connector. Specifically, test point 1 corresponds to number 2, orange terminal, and test point 2 corresponds to number 4, purple terminal. This measurement is critical as it will dictate the next steps based on whether battery voltage is present or absent. In step 3, the objective shifts specifically to checking the fuel gauge line for signs of failure. Begin by turning the ignition switch to the lock position once again for safety. Next, use a jumper wire to connect terminals A, fuel tank unit 4P connector number 4, and B, body ground. This establishes a direct electrical path to check if the wiring is intact. Following the jumper connection, it is necessary to remove the gauge control module, TAC, exposing the gauge control's inner workings to eliminate it from the circuit. Next, disconnect the gauge control module's 32P connector for further testing. With the connections made, check for continuity between test points. Test point 1 should correspond to gauge control module, TAC, connector number 21, LTBU, light blue, while test point 2 connects to body ground. Identifying continuity in this step signifies that the fuel gauge wire is functioning correctly, enabling you to proceed to the next troubleshooting steps without the need for repair. Step 4 transitions to checking the continuity for the fuel gauge plus line, crucial for ensuring that voltage can travel effectively through the circuit. Similar to previous steps, begin by turning the ignition switch back to the lock position, ensuring safety. Utilize a jumper wire to connect terminal A, which is fuel tank unit 4P connector number 2, pure purple, and terminal B, which connects to body ground. This creates a direct connection that allows for a straightforward check of the circuit's integrity. Ensure the fuel tank unit 4P connector is disconnected during this testing. After the jumper connection is established, check for continuity between test points. Test point 1 will correspond to gauge control module TAC connector number 22, pure purple, and test point 2 will connect to body ground. If continuity exists, it verifies that the fuel gauge plus wire operates correctly, allowing you to proceed to performance checks of the fuel gauge sending unit. Whereas a lack of continuity points to a potential fault requiring repair. Step 5 is dedicated to analyzing the performance of the fuel gauge sending unit itself. Start this step by turning the ignition switch to the lock 0 position to ensure safe working conditions. Following this, remove the previously connected jumper wire that had been applied to the fuel tank unit 4P connector. The next crucial step is to remove the fuel tank unit from the vehicle. Careful handling is necessary since the fuel system operates under pressure. Once the fuel tank unit is removed, conduct a thorough test of the sending unit to ascertain if it performs as expected. If the fuel gauge sending unit passes the test, it confirms that the unit is functioning correctly, enabling progress to the next troubleshooting phase. If the unit fails the test, it is advisable to replace the fuel gauge sending unit to ensure that accurate fuel levels can be monitored effectively. Then proceed with repair verification. In the final troubleshooting stage, Step 6, the procedure emphasizes checking the gauge control module's functionality. Start by securely connecting both the fuel tank unit 4P connector and the gauge control module's 32P connector, ensuring a solid connection is established for accurate readings. Once these connectors are in place, switch the ignition to the on-to position, reactivating all electrical components. Utilizing the Honda Diagnostic System, HDS, clear any diagnostic trouble codes. This action resets the systems, allowing the vehicle to process with fresh values. The next check involves setting the float arm within the sending unit to the F position. By doing this, you can effectively assess whether the fuel gauge on the dashboard moves accordingly to the full position. If the gauge functions as expected, it confirms that the gauge control module is operational. However, if the gauge does not respond correctly, the gauge control module must be replaced, followed by conducting repair verification to ensure the issue is resolved. Final repair verification is crucial to ensure the integrity of the vehicle's systems after the necessary repairs have been completed. Begin this procedure by turning the ignition switch to lock 0 to guarantee electrical systems are powered down as you work. Carefully reinstall all parts that were removed during the troubleshooting process in the reverse order of removal. Attention to detail during this stage is key to avoid overlooking any connections. After all components are in place, turn the ignition switch back to the on-to position to power the systems and prepare for final checks. An important step in this verification process is to reset the engine control module, ECM, using the Honda Diagnostic System, HDS. This allows the module to recalibrate based on the new conditions, updating its internal parameters. Finally, check for any pending or confirmed DTCs with the HDS. If DTC P0463 is indicated, additional inspections are required. This thorough verification ensures that issues are definitively addressed while confirming the vehicle is safe and ready for road use. Preventive maintenance is essential in sustaining the accuracy of the fuel gauge system and avoiding issues like DTC P0463 from occurring in the first place. Regular inspections of the wiring and connectors involved in the fuel gauge circuit can help identify any signs of wear or potential damage that may lead to electrical problems in the future. It is beneficial to conduct these checks during routine service intervals, particularly if the vehicle has been subjected to harsh conditions or has an extensive service history. Additionally, maintaining fuel system components, such as filters and the fuel tank unit, is crucial for ensuring optimal performance and reliability. Regular system diagnostic checks are recommended, which will include verifying any error codes or warning indicators that may appear, addressing any issues early. By taking a proactive approach to maintenance, drivers can enhance the longevity of their vehicle's fuel gauge system, ensuring that it remains reliable over time. In conclusion, addressing DTC P0463 requires a comprehensive understanding of the fuel level sensor surrogate and its components. By familiarizing yourself with the roles of the fuel gauge sending unit and the gauge control module, as well as their locations, you can take effective steps toward diagnosing and resolving the issue. Following the outlined troubleshooting steps thoroughly enhances the chances of accurately identifying the root cause, whether it be wiring, connector, or component failures. It is equally critical to apply healthy preventive practices that encompass regular inspections and maintenance of the fuel system, which can help avert potential recurrence of related issues. Ultimately, adherence to these principles not only ensures that you effectively address DTC P0463, but also contributes to the overall reliability and performance of your Honda Civic. Please like and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.